Update. My parents invited my sister, who attacked me 6 years ago, to my bachelorette party so we could leave the past behind. But I exposed her in front of everyone, and she ended up losing her job. Part 2. It was their fault because, since our childhood, they never did anything to acknowledge the crazy sibling rivalry we had. In fact, they had even fostered it. So now, they had no right to be surprised that we didn't want to have each other in our lives. They didn't agree with me that day, and we ended up arguing, but a couple of days later, they called me again to say that they realized their mistake and wanted to apologize for it. It was a bit pointless at that moment, but I forgave them anyway because, even though I was no longer going to speak with my sister, I didn't want to lose my relationship with my parents. Now, 6 years have passed since that incident, and I've had no contact with my sister. But I know that my parents have been in touch with her and have a fairly normal relationship with her, which I don't mind as long as they don't force me to mend my relationship with her. I'm fine with that. I've seen her at other family events and things like that, but we never talk. Even when we run into each other during the holidays, we tend to avoid each other. That's how I like it. Everyone in the family knows that we don't have a good relationship, but no one really knows why. They only know that we had a fight, they don't know the specific details, and I intended to keep it that way because neither of us came out looking good from that incident. So, for almost 6 years, I never talked about this with my family. But recently, the truth came out at my bachelorette party. My maid of honor had only invited a few close family members and, of course, my bridesmaids. My fiancé was also there because we weren't following the tradition of inviting only I wanted all my favorite people there. But for some reason, my parents decided to go beyond that and invited my estranged sister to the event as well. I really don't know what they were thinking, but when they walked in with my sister by their side, I was very surprised for a couple of seconds. To my surprise, my sister also seemed equally shocked to see me there. Everyone else in the room fell silent when they entered, and it was so strange because it really felt like a standoff. After what seemed like an eternity, my parents finally approached me and addressed both my sister and me. They said that 6 years had passed since that incident, and that many things had changed since then, the most important being that we were both much older and much more mature, so they expected us to handle this situation maturely and make peace. From the expression on her face, it was clear that my parents had lied to my sister to get her to come here. Before she could say anything, I told my parents that they had no right to do this on a day that was important to me and politely asked them to leave along with my sister. I was trying to behave with dignity because I didn't want to ruin the event, but my parents didn't leave. They told me to leave the past behind. I guess that really bothered me because they were making it seem like nothing important had happened and that it would be very easy for me to simply forget it. So, to refresh their memory and let everyone else know exactly what had happened 6 years ago, I repeated the entire incident and then asked the room if they thought it was something I could simply let go of. It would have been a different story if I were marrying someone else, but I was going to marry the same guy my sister had tried to hit on when I first brought him home to meet my family. She had shamelessly done it in front of me and treated it like a competition in which he had never agreed to participate in the first place. The most important thing is that after doing all that, it was she who attacked me first just because I confronted her about her behavior and told her she was a loser. It was quite traumatic for me because, before that, I had never had anyone try to hit me like that. Even after that, she had never apologized to me in these last 6 years and had pretended that nothing had ever happened. It was ridiculous for my parents to think that they could show up with her at my bachelorette party and expect us both to just accept it. My parents were about to argue more with me, but fortunately, my sister came to her senses and left. I guess she wasn't happy about being tricked either. So, my mother went after her, probably to calm her down. My father stayed with me for a couple of seconds, but I told him I didn't want to talk to him at that moment because he had let me down so much. Then he got upset and said I was being irrational, and that if something happened 6 years ago, there was no sense in holding on to it and acting like a spoiled child. Personally, I don't think I was acting like a spoiled child, but at that moment, I wasn't interested in arguing with my father and trying to prove that I was right, so I just told him to leave. After a couple of minutes, he left too. I had to excuse myself a few minutes later to pull myself together because I was somewhat overwhelmed. But fortunately, my fiancé and my maid of honor were there to support me, and I returned to normal in a few minutes. After that, we resumed the event as if nothing had happened, and everyone else went along with it because they could understand that I didn't want to think about my parents or my sister and needed something to distract me. Once the event was over, I went home with my fiancé, and we didn't talk about that incident afterward. This happened about 5 days ago. You can click on Share More to see if there is a part 3.